Music, dance, theater. It's time to take a seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez. Hear from performers, producers, presenters, and creators who enrich our lives in the performing arts. Who's on stage? Here is Tom Alvarez to introduce you.
Welcome, and thanks for listening to this edition of On the Aisle with yours truly, Tom Alvarez. The theme music you are hearing was composed by Klein & Alvarez Productions collaborator, Dustin Klein, a pianist who also plays it. Dustin, a composer-educator, is music director of Magic Thread Cabaret, for which we co-produce shows. The music is from our original Calder the Musical, which we co-created and which premiered in Indianapolis in 2017 and was recorded in Hit City by Timothy Brickley, who is a producer, composer, band leader, and singer. Finally, the announcer is Claudia Pauley, a Juilliard-trained opera singer who is also a broadcaster and on the air in Indy on WNTS and WTLC, and nationally on NPR and NBC Sports. Thanks to all three talented artists for their contributions to this program. Today, my guests are playwright, director, and producer Casey Ross, who is artistic director and co-founder of Catalyst Repertory Theater, and Chris Saunders, director, actor, producer, who is also artistic director and co-founder of American Lives Theater. Both theater companies are Indianapolis grassroots organizations. Let's now join my conversation with these two innovative and maverick artists. You guys, I am so thrilled. You are my second guest, my first,
Wow.
quote, local guest, because, you know, I want to do a mix of both national and local artists. I think, you know, showcasing local artists is, you know, part of my mission with doing this podcast. I want to educate the world about what's available in Indianapolis. And, you know, I'm going to do music, theater, and dance. And who better to kick off my discussions of theater but you two. So,
thank you.
Both of you, I've told you both that I consider you to be descendants of the late Brian Fonseca, the founder of the Phoenix Theater, a good friend of mine. And, you know, I helped him. I was one of the original board members of the Phoenix Theater, and I have watched the two of you from afar. And, you know, we've had a lot of interactions, but please tell me about, first of all, both of you tell me about your theater and your mission. Let's start with Casey.
Sure. So my name is Casey Ross. I run a production company called Catalyst Repertory locally. Repertory is in the title because we do tend to stick with like a close-knit company of actors locally and designers that we like to feature while also kind of expanding to other community members. And we focus on new work or rarely staged work that you don't necessarily get a chance to see in the Midwest. So our mission is, if we do a big classic, to adapt it in some new and exciting way to bring kind of a black boxy Steppenwolf experience to Indianapolis downtown.
And how about you, Chris? Tell me about your company.
Sure. Hi. So I'm the founding artistic director of American Lives Theater. And sort of like the name suggests, we try to find work that reflects what is happening in American life right now from a variety of perspectives. And usually that results in new work that's never been done in Indianapolis. But we try to keep it open. So, for example, we did just kind of go off the page and do a William Inge play from the 60s. But generally, yeah, we also, just like Casey, we do very, very new work, either premieres or, you know, new to Indiana.
Tell me, how and why did you found your theaters or your organizations, Casey?
I mean, not to sound selfish, but I'm also a playwright, and there are companies that do focus on new work in Indy. But I mean, I think in the hazard of the trade of running your own company, you tend to produce your own work because you're not going to charge yourself rights, and you got to start at home to support yourself with new work. So I started it as a means to an end to produce stuff through Fringe Festival a little bit more meaningfully and have a company name that wasn't just my name, because I didn't feel like the work that we were doing was just reflective of me. I had business partners, and so it was time to structure things in a way where I was able to have an umbrella that could provide artists a place to make stuff and to do new work, not just myself. So it kind of just grew from a means to an end, and I found out that I really liked producing work. I really liked directing work, and I liked giving people opportunity to do their stuff as well. So I found a passion in being a means to an end to myself.
How about you, Chris?
You know, I worked with Brian some before I moved other places, and it informed how I viewed art and theater and what I wanted to just for fun, what I wanted to see, on a Friday night or whatever. So when I was in other cities, living in other cities, primarily New York or Chicago, I just found myself seeing all these plays that I wanted Indianapolis to see. And so I would send them to Brian or whomever, and sometimes they would get done. But I guess that's what started it, because I was primarily an actor, and I love acting, but there was a lot of things that aren't related to why you go into acting in the career of being an actor, especially when you get into like commercial auditions and that sort of thing. And I just had a realization when I was in Chicago that I'd rather be producing all those plays that I was hoping someone would produce in my hometown.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of acting, I saw you, first laid eyes on you, and you played Stanley in a production of A Streetcar Named Desire, which Casey and I have a connection to. We'll talk about that later. But as far as acting, we'll get into that later as well. But Casey, describe your organization's history thus far.
Sure. So when I was still in college, I actually got a Dr. Tom Evans Emerging Arts Scholarship. I don't know if anyone at the table knows Tom Evans. He was a professor at Hanover College, and he runs several regional theaters and has kind of a directing name to himself. And he gave me this grant for the play I had written, Gallery, to produce it at the Fringe Festival, because the year before I left for college, I had attended my first Fringe because I did some marketing and design work for a production, and I fell in love with this concept of new festival theater and the fact that you can have a 60-minute show that you build in 10 minutes. You got to tear it down and put it in the back of your truck, and it was just so exciting to me that there was that much art on Mass Ave for that 10 days. So I got really obsessed with producing Fringe work. So when I got that first grant, that was my first festival in 2007, and I did a festival pretty much every year until like 2013, when I met Dave Pelsu, who became kind of my partner in crime in Catalyst, because we just had the same ideas about what we wanted to see in indie. We liked each other's work. We wrote well together, and it just kind of grew from there. The next year we met Taylor Cox, and then I was like, here's the Repertory company that I've always wanted to start in Indianapolis, because that was always kind of in the back burner of my head of like, man, I would really like an old school troupe of actors where we're close enough to do kind of those gritty, intimate, hard shows. I mean, we've done Equus, The Pillowman, Streetcar. I mean, stuff that has difficult subject matter, I think, requires a certain amount of comfort with your team, and that's why the repertory structure was kind of important to me. So it kind of just grew from the art family building as time went on.
How about you, Chris? Tell me about the history of ATL.
So American Lives Theater, you actually were my first interview, so thank you for that, in 2019 when it was just getting started. And around that time, I was literally going onto Amazon buying books that said, how do you start a theater company? Going to YouTube and figuring out how to fill out the 501c3 forms, that sort of thing. So I cobbled a board together of friends, people who owed me favors, and people who I waited on as a bartender. Uh-huh. And you just sort of figure it out. I mean, Casey knows that, of course, and you know that from the early Phoenix days. You just figure it out on the way, and that's the difficulty, but also the pride of it. Just looking back over just a few years and seeing how much more how many mistakes you made, and where you are comparatively.
What is your estimation of each other? I'm curious. Chris, what do you think about Casey and her work?
It's funny that you asked that today because I'm filling out a bunch of grant forms, and so tell our audience, tell my audience, what is it that you do for your side hustle? So my day job, I love that you call it side hustle. My day job is I'm the grants manager at Phoenix Theater. And so in this case, I'm doing double duty on the grants deadlines for American Lives Theater and Phoenix, which are very different companies. Yeah. And they often ask you to sort of explain how you are unique and how your company is different. And I always come back to, Catalyst as well as maybe just a couple other, smaller companies, grassroots sort of companies like myself that do contemporary work. So I think that Casey stays true to her aesthetic, and I don't think there's any shame whatsoever, much more the opposite of you producing your own work. I mean, you should do it. And I also admire, having put myself into a hole of sort of like contemporary theater that relates to America right now, which seems broad, but actually is a little more narrow than you might think. I love it, but I also realize all the things that don't fit into it. For example, I just directed Hedda Gabler, which I would not do for American Lives Theater.
It was incredible.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice of you. So anyway, I admire the tenacity and the ability that Casey has to produce what's moving her at the moment. I mean, that is the beauty of a small company. You struggle, but you get to be true to yourself.
2 questions for you before we go on to Casey and ask her about the question I asked you. So what do you say to those people who say, isn't that a conflict of interest that you were working for the Phoenix and yet you produce there as well as ATL?
So I asked that same question when I interviewed for the position, and because the Phoenix is leaning so much into the resident companies that are housed in that building right now, it is very beautifully and very genuinely not a conflict of interest. It is exactly the opposite. They would like, those companies to be more involved in the overall mission of the building and the larger mission. Mm-hmm. That essentially is very similar to what Brian brought as far as the diversity that's being represented.
It is his vision. Do you agree?
Yes, because he was very into community and very into diversity long before it was being talked about on a larger scale. Long before. So yeah, that's nice to be a part of that.
And since you played Stanley Kowalski, what did you think of Ms. Ross's interpretation of?
Well, first of all, was it Ian that played Stanley?
Yeah,
I thought he was great. I thought there were a ton of strong performances in that. It was unlike any I'd ever seen, which I think is what you wanted. And I think it was actually in the same space, and it looked so different from the one that we did, which is really what you want when you.
I was actually worried about that because I saw the production that you were in Fringe, and that's just one of my favorite rooms to do theater in. And I was like, do I really want to do a second production of Streetcar after one that was so notable in Indianapolis in the same room?
It's such a challenge because you're not going to get that sort of iconic balcony whatever moment, or not balcony. It's not a balcony. What is it called?
The upstairs downstairs.
Yeah. But no. I mean, you were very creative. Certainly with your design, and I think that's also something Casey's known for.
And I have to say that Casey triumphed by doing a revival of something that hadn't been done since the one you were on.
Yeah, it's sort of funny.
Unless I'm wrong, is that true?
I don't think so.
I don't think that is wrong.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, it's rarely produced because it's a lot, and we'll get into that later. But so, Casey, tell me what your thoughts are about Chris and his work.
So I'm kind of thrilled to be at the table because I've looked up to Chris. I've looked up to yourself in the Indianapolis area, and I certainly looked up to Brian, who was also mentioned. And so for me, coming out of high school, I went to Cathedral High School and then going right into college and having
Michael Moffat was one of your teachers.
He was.
Talk about that for just a second.
Which is wild, yeah. Because everybody says Michael Moffat, and I'm like, that's Mr. Moffat. I can't do that.
For those who don't know Michael, he is the technical director for Cathedral High School, or what is his title?
Yeah.
He's also a brilliant lighting designer and set designer for Summer Stock Stage, and I believe Eclipse, Emily Aristine Holloway's company. So
one of the only other professional theater people in the city I can think of that has a Starmites credit on the resume as well. So there you go.
So you were saying?
Yeah. So I looked up to these other companies that I would go around, kind of like the experience you were having in Chicago and New York, and see these shows that either you wanted to do or you wanted to bring to a different audience. I have kind of a mission with Catalyst that theater should be approachable and kind of a little bit more in your face than the big proscenium and distance between audience and actor. So I really like intimate stuff. So seeing these big productions that I kind of, I guess, lusted after in the city, and now being able to interact with you both, with people like Brian, with, people that do work at the Phoenix Theater, it's really cool. And it's a testament, I think, to your kindness, both of you, your openness. I think that your theater is approachable. I think even though you guys quickly, went into the Phoenix and you went into larger spaces, you've still done a really great job of featuring local artists in stuff that they wouldn't get to do locally. And I think that's important to keep our artists here in Indiana and not have people going to Chicago to get work, not have people going to New York to get work. We need the grassroots companies that give people good opportunities. So, I mean, I know you said you were going through books how to start a theater company. I was looking to people who had already started those theater companies and doing the same thing. So I was kind of, in a way, following in people that I looked up to's footsteps. So it's really cool to be involved more meaningfully in the scene.
And, as I continue this podcast, as people come to know me, people who aren't aware of my coverage for the last 40 plus years, which I'm very proud of, I want to be perfectly transparent. And I love the fact that most of the people I cover have become friends, or at least strong acquaintances. And, because I travel everywhere, I get to know everybody, and I make it my business because that's my purpose. But having said that, again, to be perfectly transparent, Casey, you and I have had many talks, and you're still not there, and you've got to work on it. You're an equal. I consider you an equal, and I think it's time for you to put on those big girl pants and own that you're just really talented and gifted. And we'll get into your playwriting later, but let's move on. So tell me about what both of you are currently working on. Of course, I saw your newest creation, so let's talk about that, and tell me what you're doing.
So we are running The Minutes by Tracy Letts, the Indiana premiere of this really funny, really unique, surprising play that's very, very much about American life right now. That's for sure. And
why is that? Tell us why. Put it in context. What's an American life?
So it's okay. That's a great question. It's a lot of things. Just to rewind a little bit because it's relevant, our season opener this year was focused on two dreamers, two people who grew up in the States and were still considered illegal immigrants. And it was a beautiful play, and I was very proud to bring it here. And it brought amazing conversations at Phoenix from those actually living that life here in Indianapolis. And so for us, we try to tell a story that's not a lecture about what it is to live in America right now from different perspectives. So that was one. And so The Minutes is it's a play that takes place entirely in a town council meeting in a fictitious American town. And what begins as almost sitcomish humor about the petty grievances,
a la The Office.
It does have an Office vibe to it. Yeah. Quirky characters that you're sort of like laughing at / with, and there's an undercurrent of, I don't know, something sinister, and then it is revealed what it is, and what it is, without giving away too much, is it's an American truth that we all actively try to avoid.
And I have to say that I reviewed it, and though I don't give out stars, I think that I indicated that it was filled with surprises, and And I came away, again, your mission, I know as a reviewer that I am so pleased to see your work because it constantly gives me perspectives. And it's interesting, as you know, Chris, oftentimes I have personal experiences related to you.
Yes, you do often. That's true.
To your work and what you
surprising ones, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So, your heroes of the fourth turning.
It's a great example.
Tell our listeners about what I concluded about all that.
Yeah, that was probably the most shocking thing that you told as far as a personal connection, because that took place in Wyoming at a very small evangelical college. In which it's your nephew, right? Mm-hmm. Actually attended that very college, and just very briefly, us giving voice to those characters. Some people among our typically liberal audiences were frustrated at having to hear some of the things that came out of their mouths. But for me, it's a question of, well, we're all living in the same place, so maybe we should know what other people are thinking, and that's why I just want to be very careful about it not being a chamber echo sort of situation where we just pat ourselves on the back or
preaching.
Yeah, preaching to the choir type situation. Mm-hmm. So yes, I was proud of that show, proud to bring it to Indy, and really surprised that you had that close of a connection to it.
This is bizarre.
Yeah.
This is bizarre. Casey, tell me about what you're working on.
So we are working on a new version of a play that I wrote, actually, called Bat in the Wind, or a recent study on depression and addiction. And it is just that. It is a 2-character show where the characters are connected by a single wall of a duplex they share here in the Midwest. And it kind of focuses on addiction in all forms, be that addiction to your art form or your life's mission, or just downright addiction, and how we are more similar with that part of society that we would like to avoid than we might think we are. And so it was well received at Fringe. I was about to say successful, but I stopped myself because not a ton of people saw it in a festival setting. It's a difficult play. It's dramatic, it's dark, and I think when you're at Fringe Festival at the beer tent, you want to see something kind of funny, and you want to see something maybe easier on a summer afternoon. It's not like a 1 o'clock in the summer kind of show.
Just to interject, I agree with you, and that play was excellent.
Thank you.
It was excellent.
It's a tricky thing about depicting alcoholism and drug addiction, because in some ways, what are people laughing at? The stereotype? Or is it sort of a nervous laughter about it makes them uncomfortable because it's tragic and in reality? So the way you posed it is that, it was interesting. And again, I reviewed it and came away. I thought it was extremely thought-provoking, as is all your work.
I hope people know both of them. Mm-hmm. I certainly know both of them. I've certainly been both of them.
How is it, tell me, if as much as you'd like to, about, it's loosely based on your own life. Or an incident.
Yeah. I lived in a duplex. I have been an artist my whole existence. I have worked side hustles or day jobs to make it work. And the play follows a particularly dark section in my life where I was, pretty much self-medicating to function because I was not in a good spot. And I wasn't making enough money to keep my utilities on, but I was still trying to start a theater company. And that's kind of a plot point in the play. And so I held on to it for a really long time because Randy, the drunk neighbor in the play, he is quite real. He was my neighbor, and we had a very similar relationship, symbiotic and sharing power, and also kind of maybe leeching off of each other a little bit. And so it's not a pretty play, and it wasn't a pretty section of my life. So I think I held on to it for so long until I knew I had the distance from it and the ability to maybe tell it as a story and not have it be so embarrassing or personal, and be able to own that again in my life and be able to name what was going on that kind of put me in that situation. Because I mean, I've had so many people like, well, we don't believe you didn't really live like that. And I'm like, oh, believe me. I was like, you can ask some of my closer friends. Like, I didn't have power. I auditioned people on my porch.
The power cord is a central prop in the show, is it not?
It has to be an orange extension cord.
It is.
Yeah. Oh, it is very much. And so it was scary, but I also kind of took away from it that the reception to it and people saying, I know these guys and I understand how this happens, has been really healing. And it's been really freeing as well to kind of take that year of my life back and make it into some art. Because I mean, after all, that's what Taylor's trying to do the whole play.
And I was just one of a chorus of people said, Oh, Casey, you need to make this longer. You need to expand it. And I know when I first brought that up to you, you seemed to kind of push back on that.
I did.
And then when I heard that it was becoming a full-length play, I was just at the top of the list of those who were terribly excited. So tell us about the version that's coming up.
Yeah. I pushed back because I really liked what we made at Fringe. Despite, low audience numbers, I was like, this was what I wanted it to be. It's out of my hair and I can be done with it. But then the more I thought about it and the more I heard people's reaction to it, I wanted the longevity of their friendship to be more present in the play. And I wanted to get to maybe see, without giving it away, see the what Taylor will be taking away from Randy to get to the end of the play. And so I have put a couple scenes, basically the best way I can describe it is in the middle of the show. So we get to see them meet and they exchange the power cord, the essential prop. But then there's some work in the middle now that's going to take us from a 60-minute show to closer to, it was about 95 minutes last night. So we're not going to do an intermission. It's still going to be kind of sit with us, but I think it's just it's slower and it gives us more opportunity to get to know these guys, which I think is important because the end pays off a little bit more the more that you truly come to care about them.
And who did you cast?
I cast Matt Kraft again, who made your Indiana Luminaries artist list. So I was so proud of him. We worked with him at Streetcar.
Both of you were on my the Luminary list.
Yes, thank you for that.
Thank you.
It was my great pleasure and honor to showcase the two of you. So go on.
And then it's a two-man show. And so originally in our Fringe version, it was my partner with Catalyst, Dave Pelsu, but his wife just had their second baby, not just, but recently, so he wasn't coming back.
Shout out to David,
yeah, one shout of my favorite
actors.
And so my friend Dane Rogers, who actually, oddly enough, introduced me to Dave to replace him in a show that he thought he was not appropriate for, that I offered to him. He introduced me to Dave, and now Dane is coming to replace a role that Dave had to leave. So I had to tell Dave about that. I was like, hey, guess what? It's full circle. So I'm really excited that Dane's going to be stepping in. I got to hear it last night. We did a read through, and it's a different show. But
and when does it? Tell me when it opens, when it closes.
March.
Where can people get tickets, so on and so forth?
March 1st through 17th. Tickets are on indiefringe.org, and you have to go to the all shows because we're still, a month out. So there's some stuff coming at the Fringe before us because they're not exactly the Phoenix model, but they're doing a similar idea with resident companies and the Spotlight season. So that's where Catalyst is going to be producing our work this year, is part of the Spotlight season. So several local companies will be bringing some cool stuff to Fringe.
And I have written about both of you and your talent for casting. So let's talk about actors. And as Casey mentioned, this isn't about me, but I am very, I'm very happy that Casey convinced me to returned to the stage after I was telling everybody it was 30 years, but I'm getting dotty. And actually it was only 20 years because I've forgotten I was in a last play I did was with our beloved late Ron Spencer. Oh. He directed Mr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde, or Dr. Hyde, Mr. Jekyll, Dr. Hyde. Yeah.
Yes.
And so that's the last show I did. And I was in Streetcar Named Desire. Talk about Streetcar and how special that. I mean, it was special to me. Tell me about your perspective.
So I went to Hanover College, and one of my major professors, who was actually my playwriting mentor, was also a Tennessee Williams scholar. And so I got this sort of, interesting education that really shaped my career. I think I kind of figured out who I was as an artist in college. So I have one foot in, this classical theater, not that Streetcar is classical, it's, great American theater, but like older stuff, the big classics, but also this interest in new work. And so I had reread Streetcar recently because my partner, Dave, I was trying to think of good roles for him. Since I run a repertory, I typically tend to pick shows that structure to a certain actor that I'm looking to feature. And so I was like, you got to play Stanley before you're too old to do it. And I mean, he was already getting there. And so, he's not going to mind that I said that, but he won't. But because he was kind of like, really? You sure? And it didn't work out. But then I had already purchased the rights to the show, and I was gung ho because when I say I'm going to do something, I almost kind of get tunnel vision to a fault. And I was like, all right, he can't do it. We're just going to do Streetcar. And it opened me up to not think about how to make this Dave's Streetcar or how to make this the actors who I'm looking at Streetcar, but why do I want to do Streetcar? And I think that sometimes when plays get into this status of being so iconic, they lose a little bit of their bite. And so I was like, Streetcar in people's laps to really show the deplorableness of what these people are doing to each other, even though it's pretty language, even though it's a beautiful story, even though the film is so revered, really sit down with the story. It's similar to the American Lives model of this is how people are. And so having them in our laps and being able to kind of shine a light on them is good.
From the actor's perspective, being on stage in my small role as I'm blanking on his name, was so small. Pablo. And by the way, I don't have a Latino or Spanish accent, so I used my mother and father, Raul y Feliz. So as a piece of my acting training. But anyway, every night I just I couldn't help because we were surrounded by audience, and the shock on their faces, they were like deers in a headlight. They were so drawn into that story, and that you heard gasps, lots of gasped theater.
I think maybe in a podcast setting, we should mention that originally the thought with the production was to do it in the round.
Right.
And when we got to Tech Week, and we had this monolith of a 2-story set in this very, very small 90-seat theater, pushing the poor theater to its technical capacity, I did in 2023. But the set was in the center, and we wanted audience on all 4 sides so that you could see it multiple times and get different views of the glass house. And you're looking through different rooms. So maybe if you're in the back end of the show, you're seeing the bathroom and what's going on with Blanche over there. Or you can be by the poker game and you can see what's going on with the poker guys over here, or in the bedroom. We adjusted a little. It was I'm calling it the semi-round because we did go around the back end quite a bit, but we pulled some chairs.
Give a shout out to the designer.
Oh, Nick Kilgore. I think if you don't have your eye on this kid as a designer in the city, you're not doing your due diligence to research your local theater artist, because incredibly talented. We had one meeting over coffee. I kind of just briefly described this idea of a glass house, and he came to me with just brilliant set design.
Another way you both are similar to our beloved Brian, is your gift for finding the right designers. And tell me about the designers of your current show, Chris.
So a couple of them I've worked together. A few of them I've worked together before. There's I'll start with sound, actually. Oh, no, I'm confused. I have to tell you, I just closed Natural Affection.
I don't
And then we started
you.
with the minutes like 4 days later and opened after it closed. And so I keep confusing the two shows.
That was behemoth. The whole process of closing one show and opening another.
It was, I don't recommend it, but it worked out.
Yeah. Only you could pull it off.
Well, it remains to be seen, but I do feel good about it. I feel good about both shows. And we are fortunate to be working with Zach Hunter, who is also the, I don't know if technical director is his title. I forget what his title is, but at Phoenix Theater Cultural Center. So that, checks off so many boxes as far as I can go to him with a lot of the same questions. And he's designed so much in that space, which is wonderful, because that's the first time I've been in that particular theater at Phoenix, that stage. And then, you just mentioned in your review the other day, Tony Cirque and Tim Dick. I mean, they both work around town all the time.
Those guys are brilliant, and I don't throw that word around, but I put them in that category. We're really lucky to have those two in the smart.
Oh, so lucky. Yeah, I agree.
So I started to talk about actors, and what I meant is not to dish actors anyway, because I am one, right? Or I was. But in that regard, what's your audition process? What are you looking for when you choose actors, both of you? Casey?
I remember each audition of like the formative members of my career, I guess, because again, like having that repertory structure, Dane being the first actor actually that who's now going to be taking over Randy and Bat, he came in, and I'm typically looking for if I believe you. And I don't want theater acting where it's like very close and I can almost reach out and touch you to be kind of as distant as like the old Vivian Leigh era of film acting where everything is airing towards melodramatic. It worked in its time, but I think, again, if we're trying to center these stories, I want an actor that I really believe.
Did you study Stanislavski?
I did,
okay.
and
so
Meisner
that
as well.
informed your work at school?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I also have not professionally around Indianapolis done a lot of acting work, but I do come from an acting background. I discovered.
You used to be in commercials.
I used to be in a lot of commercials. I had the commercial kid thing. But I did get my scholarship into college for acting, oddly enough, and acted all through college. And it was when I wrote my first play that my professor sat me down. They're like, hey, so you're not bad at acting, but this is what you do. So, it kind of just changed the trajectory. But, I think that has kind of morphed me into maybe more of an actor's director, because I think...
Well, in that regard, Chris, I'm going to get back to that. But Chris, tell me about how you choose your actors. What is your MO?
I want things to matter a lot and deeply. So I guess when I'm watching someone, we can have different interpretations of the script. I mean, that's a discussion, that's directable, that's a lot of things. So I don't care so much if an actor comes in doing something off the wall that I would not have, anticipated. I like interesting choices. What I want to see is that it matters deeply, because that's the kind of theater that I want to do, is where the stakes are important. And so that's what I want to see, I guess, most in an audition.
From my perspective, and I've said it to both of you, and I've said it in my writings about both of you, is that you have developed a reputation among actors who come to your shows. That's a really good sign for me as a reviewer. Whenever I come to both of your shows, I see a lot of actors who I really respect. That says a lot about actors' choices and what kind of theater they want to see. Many of them, tickets are expensive, and
sure.
Most artists have to budget those things into,
Absolutely.
But, it's important to see it work, and to also, many of the people that I've seen in audiences have ended up in your shows. Okay? So, but having said that, so you become, you are directors, becoming known as directors, that actors and the material that you choose is the kind of work that actors want to do. And do you agree with that?
Yes, I I feel very, very fortunate to be able to have been able to bring the plays that I've brought to Indianapolis, because they're great plays, and frankly, larger companies should be doing them, right? So yes, I think a lot of it, I'm not trying to thank you for the compliment, but I think a lot of it's the work.
I'm sure you've heard this before, though, not just from me, about actors being drawn to your productions.
Yes, which is certainly beneficial when you're trying to do this difficult work.
I internalize it just as a playwright, because not that Catalyst only does my work. We do Streetcars, or like we just did an adaptation of a musical, but we do a lot of my stuff. And so it's always kind of a sit back and smell the roses moment for me that these actors want to do my stuff. Because I mean, these are people that I go to see shows that, you know, they're in, and if they're there doing my work, I take my own work a little bit more seriously, because it centers me of like, here's Matt and Dane, and they're doing a very serious reading of what you wrote, and they're going to be working on this for the next 2 months of their lives, memorizing it. So it puts you in good perspective to make your best art if you're making with people that you truly vibe with and respect, and that push you to be better.
You know, part of my goal with this podcast is to not only showcase performers and those who create art, be that theater, music, and dance, but I have a sort of a larger reason for wanting to do the show, because hopefully there's a potential that this show could have a national audience. And, that's why I'm going to showcase national people as well, people who've actually played Indianapolis and who can speak to the vitality of our arts and entertainment scene. And I'd be interested in knowing from both of you your perspective, and I'll frame it in terms of your own experiences. So, they used to say, and I think it's still that perception out there, well, if you were any good, you'd be in Chicago or New York or LA. You've been to Chicago, you've been to New York. And Casey, I know we've talked about your choices to be in Indianapolis, but tell me about, from that perspective, why Indianapolis?
Well, I hate that perspective quite passionately, actually, because I think that it's so belittling to the people who live here or anywhere and need good art, which is everyone. So the idea that good art or art at all should be reserved for a coastline is absurd. We have ideas. We want to go to a place with our community members and think about an issue and think about a story, and just like anybody else does. And so I am very, very blessed to have the actors and the artists that I work with. And I'm very proud of the work that Indy does. I don't claim to have been to like all mid-sized cities in the U.S., far from it. But I will say that the ones I've been to, I think that we absolutely should be proud of ourselves. And I would even go so far as to say it's sort of a secret, if you think about it on a national level, the volume and density of theater that happens in this city 100%. Is striking.
Yeah.
Well, isn't it true that a lot of people who've left this market ended up in bigger markets and aren't working?
Sure. And I'm very grateful for the perspective that I have, having been in the cities that I went to. But I was, it's very Wizard of Oz cheesiness, but I sort of realized when I was away that's when I realized, oh, wait, I do have a home, because I specifically Indianapolis more so than Indiana, to be honest. But Indianapolis, I think, is a very cool city. And it's the artists work every bit as hard, and there's a modesty. There's not a bravado. It's about the work. And I couldn't be more proud to be an artist here.
And Casey, what about you? What's your perspective?
I actually have been to a lot of the major Midwestern cities. I used to be a tour actor. So I would drive around and do a children's theater play once a week in a different city. So I have seen a lot of the country. And I think, kind of building off of what Chris was saying, I think it's almost deplorable to think that you shouldn't want to bring your work to your community. Because as much as I care about theater, I care about theater on the local Indianapolis level. I'm the most passionate about indie fringe-based theater, festival-based theater, bringing work specifically to Indianapolis. I had a professor of mine, same playwriting professor that was the Williams Scholar. He was giving a lecture, and one of the things I wrote down in my notebook that just stayed with me from college on was the purpose of good theater is to entertain, then educate. And if we aren't bringing that thought-provoking art and we aren't keeping artists in our communities and in our city in indie, then we're not really doing our job as theater producers.
And would you agree that, it's been not a losing battle, but it's been a struggle for years to convince the powers that be, if you will, that, we're not just a sports destination, that we truly are a cultural destination. People just look around and really see what we're contributing to the economy and to our, if we're a world-class city, how can we be that unless we have, as we do, a world-class symphony, a world-class ballet company, we have opera, and we have this theater scene. Am I imagining this? But from my perspective, because I see everything, in my view, it is one of the most exciting, vital theater scenes that I'm aware of in the Midwest, short of Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, it is surprising because it's the perfect level of concentrated nod. I know that there's a lot of theater that happens in Ohio. It seems, from what I understand, it seems to be sort of
I'm generalizing,
different city. Yeah. Well, what I mean is we have exactly the location that is prime for a good theater hub. And I don't know, I would be curious at a longer conversation, what creates theater artists? Because, for example, Louisville, like I assumed that because of Actors Theater of Louisville, it was a huge theater hub, and it is not. It is certainly not. We have way more.
I just heard it's gone by the wayside. I wasn't keeping track. Actors Theater, the festival that used to do.
Humana certainly has.
I used to cover that. Wow.
Yeah.
That's so sad. Like all through college, I would follow Humana because I'm a playwright. I wanted to have a play there, and now it's less aspirational because.
Oh, is it because of Humana, the sponsorship? Is that
so I don't know. Maybe you know more than I do. I don't know the Actors Theater itself is down, although they have not been producing, so that's very possible.
Festival, they're not.
But Humana is definitely dead. Yeah.
Oh wow,
it's very sad.
That's a tragedy.
Agreed.
Yeah, I saw. When I covered it, I saw some of Tony Kushner's original work, and I think Angels in America.
Exactly.
Jealous.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But back to let's talk a little bit about your influences. You often, whenever I've talked with you, Casey, I interview both of you, and I recall that. Your teachers, you both had teachers that were really pivotal. And I think I shared with you that and I want to shout out to Doctors Cashman, Kenworthy, and Dr. Tolan, who founded Purdue, Indiana Theater 50 years ago. And I'm still in touch with my old theater buddies. But they were pivotal in my not only the theater training I got, but the life lessons that they taught me, they changed my life. Did you have people like that at Hanover?
Oh, 100%. And even like back into high school, I mean, I think, again, not with like getting into that or anything, but it's no small secret that I didn't have necessarily the easiest stretch of youth. And so my chosen family and the people that really were the people that held me together outside of my work were my theater mentors and the people that I felt like I owed the best of myself to in theater. And so it becomes my career, my community, and also a large part of my identity. And most of that was really just finding guidance in the theater mentors that I had in life, starting at high school level. Terry Fox and Michael Moffat were my teachers back in Cathedral. And then, my professors in Hanover were still great friends. It's cool that they're colleagues. When I directed shows in Bard Fest, my acting coach would come in and do my fights for me. So he did the fights for Coriolanus as well as Taming of the Shrew. I spoke with Mark Fiernow, who was my playwriting and Williams scholar before I was doing Streetcar. And then Paul Hildebrand, another playwriting mentor of mine, wrote the foreword to my published book. So, I mean, it's cool that these people I looked up to that kind of raised me in the art are colleagues at this point.
And Chris, who had an impact on you?
Well, I would say I studied at a few studios, here and there, and I knew that I wanted to, study Meisner, but I didn't trust myself to finish a 2-year program. So I went to a much more concentrated version of it that combined Meisner with viewpoints in Chicago. And I was very, very, very lucky to learn it under Audrey Francis, who is a brilliant actor and teacher. And, while I was there, became a Steppenwolf company member and is now co-artistic director of Steppenwolf. And so that changed my perspective, not only on acting, but the art and life in general, about doing what matters and doing it fully. And then there was a professor I had in college, and I don't even know if he would remember me, but his name was Bruce Burgun. And I just remember that he openly shamed all of us a few times because, I think it was Andre Watts had been at IU the night before and none of us, went to it or even cared. And he just really, instilled in us,
the pianist.
Yeah. Who just died. Yeah.
Yes.
And, he just really instilled in us, like, you can't do this art if you don't understand other arts. And that was really, really valuable to me because that was before I lived in New York. And I spent most of my time in New York just being a student of all art and just sponging it all up. So I'm very grateful for that too.
That relates to my next question. Where does your passion derive? Where does it come from? Casey, let's start with you.
Oh, all right. For me, I don't think I'm somebody that is going to start a family. I don't anticipate having children. And so for me, it's this idea of what we leave behind and how we leave the world when we're no longer in it. And so art is a very powerful leave behind. Art, in a way, is immortality. It's making a piece and leaving a part of yourself. And so I think if I have any viewpoints that I want to leave with, my chosen family and my community.
Don't forget your kitties.
And my kitties, yes. Stanley and Stella, named after Streetcar. I got my cats right after Streetcar. And yeah, I think it's just this idea of maybe my plays are kind of my babies. So that's what stays behind with me. And it's important that I say how I feel about things and what my opinions are before I'm no longer here. Not necessarily just myself either, but also giving a platform for art to do that because of that whole entertain and educate idea, for sure.
Chris?
I think for me, it's about having one foot in one area and having another in a completely different area and reckoning the two. I think that's what makes an artist. I growing up and really adoring my conservative grandmother and growing up gay, and just having one identity with some people and having another identity with other people, and sort of understanding where the misunderstandings are and being passionate about them understanding one another better. So I think that's where it started, and I think that's still where it is.
What is your vision for the future of your respective theaters? Casey?
I think for us, I would like to find a sit-down space or a home. I think eventually I would like to have a building for Catalyst, not to take the model of what Fringe already does for Indianapolis, but I don't necessarily want to be a company based out of another collection of companies. I want to be able to form a collective where we have a dedicated black box for new work in Indianapolis. So Dave is a contractor. One of the things that we talk about just kind of down the road, maybe when his kids are older and when I'm a little bit more financially savvy and Catalyst to be able to do this, it would be so cool to just allow my friend, who is a brilliant contractor and also a person that has theater education, to design a theater space, kind of an alternative downtown black box garage where we can provide a place for local playwrights, because we have a robust writing scene in Indianapolis that I don't think gets enough love either. So just having a space for artists to make as I'm maybe sort of slowing down myself is a big goal.
Chris?
I would very much like to be a part of the machine that allows professional artists to thrive in this city, and to be able to give them not just gigs but careers, and on a community level to really be entrenched in the community and be a place where people know that they can go to untangle some questions that they have with the world. I think that would be a mission accomplished.
I'm about to wrap up here, but I wanted to share with you all and with all our listeners that as I move forward on the show, I'm trying to learn lessons from people who came before me, and I've sought out the advice of a lot of professional broadcasters in my circles. And someone told me something that I will remember as a word of caution. And I asked them, so how are you most comfortable in an interview? He says, well, and this is a really well-known entertainer. And he says, well, Tom, the thing about some interviewers, they ended up making it all about themselves rather than showcasing you and giving you the opportunity. And so, I really am going to struggle with that because my personal and professional life, I have a lot of intersections. I quit worrying about conflict of interest a long time ago, but I do have experiences that are, that I would like to share on occasion when it's relevant. For instance, I was there when Brian Fonseca gathered together 10 people in the home of a person who eventually became a board member and pitched the idea of the Phoenix Theater. Wow. And I was there. It was like being at the signing of the Declaration of Independence. I knew that I knew that Brian was going to do it, and that was his passion that I heard. You both have that passion. And now when I walk into that multi-million-dollar Phoenix Theater Cultural Center, I know where it started. And I'm very grateful to have that experience. So again, knowing what possibilities are, I think that you two, the sky's the limit. But Brian also taught me one other thing. My success is due to all those I surrounded myself with. Surround yourself with good people, and they make you look better.
Yep.
Thank you.
Do you agree with that?
Of course.
Without a doubt. Yeah. The reason I so desperately wanted to change the name of the theater company, because originally I started an LLC, just my name. It was Casey Ross Productions. I was producing my own plays. And 3 years in, I was like, we're changing the name to Catalyst because the sum of this company's work is not my name. It is everyone that works under this umbrella.
So you both want to see your mission live on after you're gone?
While I'm here. I want the mission to be bigger than me, 100%.
Now, that there's in the School of Philanthropy, where I took some classes, fundraising school, they talk about, it's actually in the books. It's called Founders Disease. Do you know anything about that? It's a term.
No.
People who found organizations and who have to be, their fingers have to be, plied off of the, when it's time to leave. But do you guys feel confident that you're building something that you want to leave for future generations to take over after you're long gone?
I would love that, yes. And I'm actively trying to make that the case. It doesn't mean that I don't have personal projects or personal preferences or honestly want a career for myself. That's more, sustaining but the mission is I'm so excited about it, which I should be because I came up with it, that of course I 100% want the artists and the community to believe in it and rally around it much more so than any individual, including myself.
You know what? I just realized I can't leave without Casey telling me about your work as a playwright. I don't think that people realize that we have you in our midst, people who love good theater.
I get that a lot. I go to IPC, Indiana Playwriting Circle, that a lot of times people don't even know is here. So shout out to the Indiana Writers Center as well as the Indiana Playwright Circle. Great organizations for writers to have a lasting impact on their career and get sustainable education to produce their work. Super passionate about that organization, but I don't do a good job of taking my plays outside of Indiana or outside of Fringe. And so I think that a lot of times people think that Catalyst creates our Fringe shows, and I don't really necessarily have some serious work, but I do have a published trilogy of plays that I actually started in college that I produced as episodes throughout the Fringe Festival, because my concept was to grow up as a writer tangibly, that the audience and actors could see. And it's this triptych of plays: as they get older, I get older. And so it's topical stuff, it's pushy stuff, but it's approachable stuff.
And
I hope you know my characters.
You have a wicked sense of humor.
I do.
I've told you could write for television easily.
I get that all the time.
You could. I mean, your stuff is funny. Oh, ooh, biting. Is more like I'm gonna have to take off here and let you guys go for your busy lives. But how can people help you with your organizations, Casey?
Catalyst is at a point now, I think after COVID happened, our infrastructure fell apart a little bit. Me and Dave are edging towards maybe like experiencing the founder's disease, where it's like we are going to have to back up and find other leadership. So we're looking to develop a strong board, and we're looking to find a volunteer force, a sponsorship force, and kind of like what Brian did in his living room and say, Catalyst has been here for a decade. Let's put the infrastructure back in place and have not just the founders there, but have some more voices there. So, I mean, if you're interested in joining a local board, if you're interested in being a corporate sponsor, if you're interested in volunteering or designing, I would love to know you.
And how about you, Chris?
If I could just say one thing to people, I want people to champion a theater. Like it can be a theater company, it can be a physical location. Just become a champion, and whatever that means, because it's introducing this as a lifestyle, as theater going as a lifestyle, which, we could have 2 other podcasts about whether that's waned or not over the years. But if you are vibing off of theater, then share that with other people and be loud and proud about it, because the rest will follow. The donations, the sponsorships, everything. But if theater matters to this community, everything else will follow.
Mm-hmm. And one more thing that our friend Brian used to say, can you guess what it would be?
The 10 Friends?
Yeah, during his curtain speeches.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Deb Sargent was sitting behind me. Did you hear her yell out, "Tell 10 friends"?
No, I didn't know she said that. That's so funny. I love that.
Shout out to Deb Sargent. I hadn't seen her for a really long time. It was just really warmed my heart to see her sitting in your audience. She knows good theater when she sees it, right?
I appreciate that.
Well, good luck to both of you. I'll be on the aisle, and I'm delighted that you were on the show.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who will take center stage on the podcast next? Your seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez awaits. Follow Tom on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and make sure to visit tomalvarez.studio. Watch Tom every other Thursday on Lifestyle Live on Wish TV, and make sure to listen every week here on the All Indiana Podcast Network.